The island of California. For over 150 years, the greatest empires on Earth believed California was an island, detached from North America. It started with the Spanish explorers in the 1500s. They described a Red Sea that physically separated the coast from the mainland. On every official map from 1622 to 1747, the island of California was drawn with mountain ranges and specific, thriving ports. Even after explorers found it was connected to the land, the King of Spain ordered the maps to remain as islands for the public. Was this just a mistake, or was there a strategic reason to pretend the most valuable coast on Earth was unreachable by land? The maps were so detailed they included Saguenay, a legendary city of gold located on the northern tip of the Mystery Island. In 1747, King Ferdinand VI issued a decree stating, "California is not an island." But the maps didn't stop for decades. Some fringe theorists believe the maps were actually correct, that a massive flood or mud flood changed the geography overnight. Others suggest that the island of California was a glimpse into a parallel timeline that was bleeding into our own. If you look at modern satellite imagery, the fault line suggests the land is actively trying to pull away, as if returning to its old form. Were the ancient mapmakers seeing the future? Or were they remembering a past that has since been edited by time? Jesuit priests who lived there claimed they saw the Red Sea vanish before their eyes during a series of massive earthquakes. The suppression of these maps wasn't just about geography, it was about controlling who had access to the Pacific treasures. To this day, antique map collectors find island California charts that predate the official discovery. The dates don't line up. We trust our maps to tell us where we are, but California reminds us that the land under our feet can be a lie if the king says so. The Red Sea may be gone, but the mystery of why we were lied to remains. In the end, the ink is the only witness. Hy-Brasil. In the year 1325, a mapmaker named Angelino Dolcert drew a perfect circle in the Atlantic. He called it Hy-Brasil. For 5 centuries, this wasn't a myth. It was a navigational fact, appearing on the most prestigious charts in Europe. But if you sail to those coordinates today, you will find nothing but 2,000 feet of empty, cold water. Explorers like John Cabot spent years searching for it. In 1497, his records suggest he found something he couldn't explain. The most disturbing account comes from Captain John Nisbet in 1674. He claimed to have pierced the permanent fog. He described an island inhabited by large, silent black rabbits, and a lone magician living in a stone castle. Nisbet returned with gold and silver. The mapmakers didn't laugh. They updated the royal charts immediately. By the 1800s, the island began to move. On some maps it shifted north, on others it simply vanished for decades. Was it a mirage, as historians claim, or does Hy-Brasil exist in a frequency that only occasionally aligns with ours? In the 1950s, modern sonar found something shocking. At the exact spot of the island, there is a plateau, Porcupine Bank. During the last ice age, this bank was above water, but that was 10,000 years before the first maps were drawn. How did medieval sailors map a landmass that had been submerged for millennia? This is where the story gets dark. Some believe the island is a remnant of a lost civilization, a piece of the world that didn't sink when the rest did. Government archives from the late 19th century show a systematic removal of Hy-Brasil from all official maritime records. They called it a cartographic error. But you don't send fleets of ships to search for an error for 500 years. Hy-Brasil remains a ghost, a reminder that our maps are only as accurate as those who control the narrative allow. Terra Australis. Long before Antarctica was officially discovered in 1820, the world's greatest mapmakers were already drawing it. They called it Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land, and it was depicted as a lush, inhabited paradise. Aristotle and Ptolemy believed it had to exist to balance the weight of the northern continents, a mathematical necessity. But the maps from the 1500s, like those of Australis, show something impossible: the coastline of Antarctica without ice. Modern science tells us Antarctica hasn't been ice-free for millions of years, yet the maps show accurate rivers and mountains. How did Renaissance sailors in wooden ships map a continent that was supposed to be hidden under 2 miles of frozen water? Some believe these maps are copies of even older charts, remnants of a high-tech civilization that existed before the ice. In 1513, the Ottoman admiral Hy-Brasil created a map that showed the South American coast connected to a mysterious land. The detail was so precise that experts from the U.S. Air Force in the 1960s were baffled. It matched the subglacial topography. This means someone mapped the land before the ice was there. Someone was flying or surveying in the deep prehistory. Captain James Cook sailed south in the 1770s to find this paradise. He found nothing but ice and fog. He declared it a myth. Cook's failure led to the erasure of Terra Australis. It was removed from the maps, replaced by a blank white void. But why did the earlier maps show cities? Why did they show the Mesa of the Sun and specific mountain ranges? Was Terra Australis a real, temperate continent that suffered a sudden, cataclysmic pole shift that froze it instantly? Or is the Antarctica we are told about today just a cover-up for what lies beneath the ice wall? The maps haven't changed. Our memory has. We are told there is nothing there, but the ink tells a different story. Frisland. In the cold, grey waters between Iceland and Scotland, there once sat an island called Frisland. It appeared on every map for 100 years. It wasn't just a speck of land. Mapmakers documented its mountain ranges, its valleys, and its thriving fishing villages. The most famous account came from the Zeno brothers, Venetian explorers who claimed to have docked there in the late 1300s. They described a civilized land with its own language, laws, and trade routes. They stayed for years, mapping every harbor. By the 1500s, even the great Mercator, the father of modern mapmaking, included Frisland in his world projections. But in the mid-1600s, sailors began to report a strange phenomenon. They would sail to the coordinates and find only open ocean. One by one, the mapmakers began to erase it. They called it a mistake, a misidentification of the Faroe Islands or Iceland. But the Zeno maps were too precise to be a mistake. They showed bays and hills that don't match any other island in the region. Some believe Frisland was a volcanic island that suffered a catastrophic collapse, sinking beneath the waves in a single night. Others suggest it was a phantom island, a mirage caused by atmospheric refraction that tricked thousands of sailors. But a mirage doesn't have cities. A mirage doesn't have its own language. The people of Frisland were recorded in historical tax logs. If the island never existed, then who were the people the Venetians met? And where did they go when the island vanished? Modern deep-sea mapping has discovered underwater mountains in that area that sit just below the surface. These mountains are the right size and shape, but they have been underwater for thousands of years. Allegedly. Was Frisland a piece of our world that fell out of place? A geographical anomaly that the universe decided to delete? We delete what we cannot explain. Frisland was removed from the maps to keep the ocean simple, but the ocean is never simple. Mount Meru, at the very top of the world, where all compasses point, modern maps show nothing but a shifting expanse of sea ice. But if you go back to the 16th century, the father of cartography, Gerardus Mercator, drew something entirely different. He called it the Rups Negra, the Black Rock, a massive magnetic mountain, 33 miles wide, sitting at the exact North Pole. Mercator's maps showed the mountain surrounded by a giant whirlpool, where the 4 oceans of the world were sucked into the earth. This wasn't just a fantasy. This Mount Meru appears in the sacred texts of the Hindus, the Buddhists, and the Jainists for millennia. They described it as the Axis Mundi, the pillar that holds up the heavens, a place where the physical and spiritual worlds meet. In the 1600s, explorers claimed that the closer they got to the pole, the more their instruments failed. The magnetic pull was absolute. Then, suddenly, the mountain vanished from the maps. By the 1800s, the center of the North Pole was drawn as empty water. Did a 33-mile-wide mountain of magnetic iron simply disappear? Or was the map changed to hide what truly sits at the center? Some theorists suggest the North Pole is actually an opening, a portal or a hole that leads into the hollow earth. Admiral Richard Byrd, in his secret diaries, spoke of a land beyond the pole that was green, warm, and inhabited. If Mount Meru exists, it would explain why GPS and satellites are forbidden from flying directly over the exact North Pole. Is the Black Rock a physical mountain, or a massive piece of ancient technology that regulates the Earth's magnetic field? We are told the North Pole is a desolate wasteland, but the ancient maps suggest it is the most important location on the planet. To control the maps is to control the direction of humanity. If we knew what was at the center, we might never come back. The mountain may be hidden in the fog of history, but the magnetic pull remains. The truth is still there, waiting to be found. Bermeja. In the Gulf of Mexico, there was once an island known as Bermeja. It was tiny, red-tinted, and for 400 years it was a landmark for every sailor in the region. From the Spanish charts of the 1500s to the maps of the late 20th century, Bermeja sat exactly at 22 degrees north. It wasn't just a rock, it was a legal anchor. In the 1970s, it defined the maritime borders between Mexico and the United States. But in 1997, when the two countries were set to sign a massive treaty over deep-sea oil rights, something impossible happened. The Mexican government sent a research vessel to verify the island's location. They arrived at the coordinates and found nothing. Bermeja had vanished, not just from the sea, but seemingly from reality itself. A landmass that had been mapped for centuries was gone. The search was exhaustive. They used sonar, satellites, and deep-sea divers. They found no underwater remains, no sunken reef, nothing. In the Mexican Senate, a dark theory began to emerge. The island didn't sink, it was destroyed, deleted by the CIA. If Bermeja had disappeared, the maritime border shifted. That shift handed billions of barrels of oil directly into the hands of the United States. Mexican politicians claimed the island was dynamited, or bombed into non-existence to redraw the economic maps of the world. But how do you blow up an entire island without anyone hearing it? Some say it was cloaked or moved using advanced military tech. A 2009 study by the National Autonomous University of Mexico concluded the island never existed, that it was a 400-year-old error. But how do you explain the sailors who stood on its shores? The 16th century journals describing its flora and fauna. Bermeja is a modern phantom, a ghost created by the intersection of geography, greed, and government secrets. When a map becomes an obstacle to profit, the map is changed, and sometimes the land itself is forced to follow suit. Bermeja is gone, but the oil is flowing. In the world of the researcher, there are no accidents, only erasures. Sandy Island. In the age of satellites and total surveillance, we believe the world is fully catalogued. But in 2012, Google Earth met a ghost. It was called Sandy Island, a landmass roughly the size of Manhattan, located between Australia and New Caledonia. It had been on the maps since 1774, when Captain James Cook first recorded it. For 238 years, it was a solid, physical fact. It appeared in world atlases, weather data, and even the professional maritime charts used by every navy on the planet. But when a group of Australian scientists sailed the RV Southern Surveyor to the island to study it, they found a nightmare. The sensors showed the water was 4,000 feet deep. There was no reef, no sandbar, no volcanic remains, just a void. The news went viral. Google Earth quickly deleted the island, leaving a digital glitch smudge in the middle of the ocean. How does an island survive for 2 centuries on every map, including digital ones, if it was never there to begin with? Some call it paper towns, a trap set by mapmakers to catch copyright thieves. But you don't trap a 1774 captain with a trap. Others suggest Sandy Island was a pumice raft, a floating island of volcanic rock that drifted across the sea and eventually sank. But the most chilling theory is the simulation error, a piece of the physical world that failed to render in our digital reality. If Google can delete an island with a single click, what else can they remove? People? History? The truth itself? There are reports of Sandy Island appearing in newer satellite photos, only to be scrubbed by updates hours later. We are transitioning from a world of physical land to a world of digital data. And in that transition, things are being lost. Sandy Island wasn't a glitch in the map. It was a glitch in our perception of what is real. The ocean is deep, and the database is vast. Somewhere in the gap between them, the island is still waiting. The Kingdom of Saguenay. In the 1530s, the French explorer Jacques Cartier sailed into the heart of Canada, searching for a route to China. Instead, he found a map to a nightmare. The indigenous leaders told him of the Kingdom of Saguenay, a land to the north where the men were white, wore fine wool, and possessed mountains of gold. Cartier was so convinced that he included Saguenay on his official maps. It wasn't drawn as a tribal village, but as a fortified, European-style city. For decades, French royalty funded expeditions to find this northern El Dorado. They believed a splinter of a lost European civilization lived in the ice. The descriptions were oddly specific. The people of Saguenay had rubies as large as fists and could fly using strange, mechanical wings. But every time the French pushed north into the wilderness, the kingdom moved further away. It was a ghost city that retreated with the fog. By the 1600s, Saguenay was removed from the maps. Historians claim the indigenous people made it up to trick the French into leaving. But if it was a lie, why did multiple tribes across thousands of miles tell the exact same story with the exact same details? Some modern researchers suggest Saguenay was a pre-Columbian Viking settlement that had grown into a massive, secret empire. Others believe the kingdom was a time slip, a colony from the future, or a past that hadn't happened yet, bleeding into Cartier's world. If Saguenay was real, its gold wasn't just metal. It was knowledge that the empires of Europe weren't ready to possess. The maps were scrubbed, the accounts were labeled fables. The kingdom was buried under the weight of official history. We are taught that the wilderness was empty until we arrived, but the old maps suggest we were the ones who were lost. 8 maps, 8 lands, 8 lies. The researcher doesn't believe in coincidences. He believes in the things the world worked hard to forget. Our world is smaller than it used to be, not because the land shrank, but because our permission to see it was revoked. Keep your eyes on the edges of the map. That's where the truth is hiding. I'm the researcher. Together, let's learn.